It's been 24 hours of feverish political theater, from the disastrous result for British Prime Minister Theresa May in last night's election to the blistering counteroffensive U.S. President Donald Trump launched against the testimony of his former FBI Director James Comey. But is it surprising? Unpredictable elections, outsider politics, and outlandish scandals have become increasingly normal. And there's a common thread running through all of it: a collapse of trust.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please be seated.
This week, James Comey described a president who wanted something, whose handshake came with strings attached.
It's my judgment that I was fired because of the Russia investigation. The endeavor was to change the way the Russia investigation was being conducted. That is a very big deal.
To Team Trump, Comey is the liar, a self-serving leaker with a deep state agenda.
It is overwhelmingly clear that there have been and continue to be those in government who are actively attempting to undermine this administration.
We're under siege. You understand that.
It all comes down to who you trust, a career Washington bureaucrat or Donald Trump. And millions of Americans
still got to believe in the president.
Don't trust the bureaucrat.
Do you trust Donald Trump?
110%.
What about James Comey?
No, absolutely not.
The issue of trust goes beyond Comey, and it goes beyond Trump as an individual. Those of us who've studied public attitudes towards government will tell you immediately that there's been about a 50-year decline in trust in government and confidence in institutions, and it's really now reached its nadir.
Extensive public polling over decades shows a steady decline in the U.S. public's trust in everything from government, Congress, public education, and the media. In fact, most institutions. In Canada, trust in both government and the media dropped by 10 percentage points in just the last year alone, to the point where less than half the population has faith in either institution.
This is maybe more marked in the United States than elsewhere, but it's pervasive in Western Europe.
Multiple places with multiple different kinds of outcomes. So, Macron in France is an effect in part of that breakdown in confidence.
The French election, you have the two major parties, the parties that have alternated power for 50 years or more, both dumped into the dustbin of history, at least temporarily.
Brexit is in part a response to that.
We got our country back!
The UK's vote last year to leave the EU, a public defiance of experts, politicians, business leaders, the entire establishment. And last night, people in Britain turned expectations upside down, denying British Prime Minister Theresa May the resounding victory she sought with that snap election.
Mr. Corbyn, don't you ever wait?
And boosting hard-left Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn.
It was like a waking up to someone that's speaking not like a politician.
I was disillusioned with the Labour Party especially, and with, the majority of the politicians. And Jeremy Corbyn, I feel, is like a completely different thing.
Politics has changed, and politics isn't going back into the box where it was before.
I am your voice.
And then there's Donald Trump. Trump campaigned as an avatar of the public's lack of faith in American institutions.
Let me tell you, the people don't trust you, and the people don't trust the media.
And the more those institutions recoil, the more faith supporters have in him.
He's got so many on the left and right that are fighting him.
The press has gotten it wrong all along. They've always gotten it wrong, and they've got it wrong again because he knows exactly what he's doing.
The cause of the decline in political trust is hard to pin down. But a history of scandal and crisis doesn't help.
If you look at the U.S. from 1964, let's highlight the main events. 1, you had the war in Vietnam. 2, you had urban riots. 3, you had conflict over civil rights. 4, you had Watergate. 5, you had the Iranian hostage crisis and stagflation.
Did you make a mistake in sending arms to Tehran, sir?
No.
Iran-Contra in the 80s, Bill Clinton's impeachment trial in the 90s.
I will revert to my former statement.
In the 2000s, Afghanistan and Iraq, then the global financial meltdown. In Canada, there were cases of hushed-up cash to politicians from Brian Mulroney to Mike Duffy. None of it good for public trust.
If you're a rational person and I ask you the question, do you trust the government to do what is right most of the time, what are you supposed to say?
But the history of measuring public trust in institutions may be distorting the way we see it.
Although we look at America through different eyes, there are many insights into the essence of our moving and growing nation that we share.
When we talk about the decline in trust, we start at a point when trust may have been higher than it's ever been in the post-World War II era, which is when these surveys really generally begin. When the economy was pretty sound, it was a very different period of time. It was a remarkable period of time. I suspect that if we had the capacity to do surveys back into the 19th century and followed them around, we would see that this is a cyclical problem.
How institutions regain trust is a riddle, but the data offers clues.
If you want to look at the data, public trust in government in the American case from 1964 until the present time shot up. There was this big uptick right after 9/11.
A national crisis may be an opportunity, as long as institutions succeed in dealing with it. That post-9/11 bump faded quickly. The other clue is to start small.
There's certain kinds of actors who tend to maintain fairly high public trust, despite these sort of cyclical waves.
One of the things you find is that people have more trust often in their local governments than in the national government, in particular agencies that deliver benefits to them successfully. So maybe you can think in terms of building trust from the bottom up. Because after all, sort of politics for most people is really up close and personal.
The entire thing has been a witch hunt.
For better or for worse, politics is also in chaos. And whatever happens to the anti-politicians of the day, the sense of betrayal they've harnessed is raw. And so far, it's only gotten worse.